I just go and look for that signature. Good now to you. We are pleased to be meeting with you in this fashion and are eager to discuss with you anything you so choose to know more of yourselves. Imagination is as valid as anything that you could perceive of as, quote, real on the spiritual plane. The biggest risk you could possibly face in life is not living your life at all. Grounding, putting your feet on literally the ground, eating a big bowl of cereal, or making love, or doing some gardening, and then having the delight of how wonderful it is to have a body in the first place. Those of you who are in service have absolutely no idea how to receive service.
Today we have Jessica, who channels VAGREIN, on our podcast, and I'm incredibly excited to speak to you, Jessica. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I loved this book so much, and although it talks about your story, I would love to hear it again from you.
I was always a little bit weird as a child. I would see things and have experiences, and my family kept telling me, no, it's all in your imagination. So I kind of suppressed all the stuff down and said, oh, those things I'm seeing walking past my bedroom, that's my imagination. Or those dreams I'm having of going on spaceships, that's my imagination. But then later on in life, when my daughter was born, I realized I was struggling a little bit. I know meditation helps a lot of people, so I'm going to start meditating. And that's where my spiritual journey began. So I started meditating and looking into different topics, law of attraction, non-duality. But what ended up happening was, later on in the meditations, my body started moving by itself, or sounds started coming through. When I came upon Abraham Hicks at first, it was accidental via YouTube. When they were talking in the plural, I had no idea she was channeling. I thought she was talking on behalf of like a philosophy group or something like that. But what happened first was those movements were starting to happen to me in meditation, or sounds were coming through. And I got freaked right out. And I said, there's no way. I do not want to be a channel. I had been feeling almost like a psychic presence or a telepathy type of situation that kept like telling me to go and try it. But on my birthday, I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. Maybe this thing exists. So I took a voice recording software on my phone and I lied down in meditation. And 20 minutes later, I woke up from what I thought was like a nap. And there was a recording on the device. And very tentatively practiced with it a little bit more over the next couple days, and was not excited about this development in, the fact that I could go to sleep and talking would happen. But at the third or fourth, maybe fifth time I did it, they were like, don't worry, you're not in this on your own. Like, people are going to gather around you and encourage you and give you the support you need. And you have free will to choose if this is the road you're going to go down or not. So it was a very gentle sort of energy saying like, yeah, you don't want to be a channel, but like, wait, because maybe you'll see how this will develop into something that will make sense to you as well. Exactly what happened was that I then met some people who were very encouraging. And when I started doing the first group sessions with these people, I realized, right, this has nothing to do with me. It's not mine to hoard or to hide. This is in service to others. And it would be very ego-driven to allow my fear to prevent me from sharing this. So that's really where the whole journey began.
I think yours was the one that was most relatable to me, because just like you, for me also, the first content that I was exposed to channel material was Abraham Hicks. When VAGREIN says that this vessel wants to hurry up in trying to save the world. That's exactly how I was feeling too. How did you get out of this urgency, or what would you think would be the biggest judgment that you had, which was stopping you from loving the world and opening your heart to now being who you are?
Gosh, I really did very much judge I think other people in terms of like, they're not waking up fast enough. They're not loving each other enough. Like, sort of like I had this almost animosity to the people who were not being loving, which is crazy because that's the same energy.
I know.
And really that's exactly what you're talking about. That sense of responsibility that like something external was any different than something internal. So I think that what shifted for me is that I see now everything that's manifest in the external world as my internal world, but without that, even that self-judgment of like, if there's a war going on, I'm not like, oh my gosh, I have to clean up my internal act because I'm causing wars and now there's suffering in the world. It's more of a space of acceptance that everything is imperfection for whatever reason. And then I get free will to be able to express who I want to be in this world to the best of my ability with compassion in each next now moment. So a lot of judgment has just shifted away.
Mm. There's this beautiful example that Vagrein talks about in the book, which is about the bee that goes to the flower, right? So it says that the flower stands out. Just because the flower stands out, everyone thinks that the flower is what is important. But actually, the flower cannot be standing without the bee or without the dirt and the mess that's under in where the roots grow. That was so beautiful. And it's an image that you cannot forget. How was it when you first came out?
It didn't take very long before I had this experience where I'd gone on holiday in a community type of setting and there were all these people around. So it was about, I think, 5, 6, 7 people at those first sort of group living room, lying down, candles lit, sage burning type of events, which is all these rituals we believed were necessary to, make the magic happen. Of course, nothing's necessary to make it happen, but that's what we were doing. And from there, it went very quickly afterwards to sort of with the same people, Zoom meetings, then invited some other people off Facebook, etc. When you're a trance channel, especially at the very beginning, there's a part of you that doesn't let go completely because you want to make sure that you're not like channeling something nefarious or like that there's not like, you're not going to be taken over or possessed. So there was definitely a caution at the beginning. And this was my way of sort of building up practice.
How do your kids react to this? Do they see you channeling? What do they think this is?
My kids are, well, my daughter's 14 now, and she's interestingly a skeptic. My son is more imaginative still. He's 8 and they don't watch me channel. So they're more interested on the practical side of things for the moment.
When they bother you, do you like channel Vagrein and find out why they're bothering you? No?
I never channel Vagrein for myself.
Really?
Yes, because Vagrein has a level of truth that us as human beings, like, or at least me specifically, like, I don't want to be told what to do, especially when I know what I'm being told is the right answer.
I get it.
I would much rather like go through all the chaos and the mess and like figure it out on my own and that sort of thing. So the times I've channeled Vagrein where I've been in a state of like, oh my gosh, I need this support has been when there have been like global things going on that have been impacting me, or where there's been something that's like very, very specific, like the end of my marriage or certain very big sort of steps where I already know the answer and I need that little push over the edge, right? But if I haven't figured out the answer yet for myself, I'm like, I'm not asking them because they're just going to be like too clean. And then I'm not going to be allowed to make the mess that I want to make, right? Because sometimes we want to get into that situation that we know is not good for us, right? We want to eat the chocolate cake or whatever.
Would you know why some people are trance channels and why some people are like blended consciousness? Is this something they choose in their soul contract or something?
I think it is something they choose. And even at the beginning, so rewinding several years from when I actually started channeling, I had 2 or 3 days where there was this strange moment of like automatic writing coming through. And I don't think I included that in the book. It's on my membership site, I think somewhere, but in that automatic writing, and again, this was, I think in 2016. So I started channeling in 2019. It said in that you're going to have a choice to transmit either from a space that is not associated with you. So I didn't know kind of what it meant at the time. I don't know what the exact words were, but a space that is not associated with you, or to be a teacher, right? So what I think that in that moment was that sort of choice point. Are you going to take ownership for the wisdom that's going to be allowed to come through you as a teacher? So like spiritual teachers, right?
Right.
It's not like they studied that like so much information and now they've like taken the books and they're reprocessing. No, there's a wisdom coming through many spiritual teachers that is would be the equivalent of infinite intelligence being channeled, except that they are transmitting it as if it's their personal wisdom at times, right? So like you might have, you know, an Eckhart Tolle, for example, who had an awakening and has all this beautiful information that now comes through him. Now, he's a teacher. He's not, no one would go like he's a channel, right? But everybody's a channel. He now has access to a stream of information that's coming through him. Like someone who's trance channeling like me, I think the choice that I was given was like, okay, this information is going to be available. How do you want to present it? How does it want to be coming through? In what way? And for me, because I think it's a personality thing, probably, or a preference thing. I do like the separation. I don't want anyone to be going like, oh yeah, I want to spend time with Jessie because Jessie's so wise and wisdom and stuff like I get to have my completely private, personal experience of my life, do what I want to do in my life, and I'm not being held to a standard of perfection or even of integration of what's coming through me. Because I believe that teachers, you know, if you're preaching like oneness, right, let's say, and then you're like have anything going on in your life that doesn't reflect that, you're going to be criticized, you're going to be looked at and scrutinized and examined. And I think that's probably the difference between what sort of channeling information comes through. I know a lot of people think that trance channeling is like a purer form of channeling.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. It doesn't feel to me like there's a level of hierarchy of purity between things. And I think that everyone gets sort of the combination of the presence and the absence and the stream of consciousness that comes through, etc., in the exact dose that's meant for whoever's coming to resonate with that material. So we each have our own unique flavor of this wisdom that can come through, and there will be more and more of us as more and more people awaken. And those unique flavors are catered and specifically tailored to the person who then is like, oh, I love that particular teacher, or I love that particular channel. So I really think that there's no better or worse type of channels or teachers, etc.
Yeah, that makes sense, because sometimes even I used to think that someone who is channeling as a trance channel is more credible than the blended consciousness. How has the human Jessica changed and her perception about the world changed?
Right. So it's changed quite a lot. So seeing other as self, radical self-acceptance. I'm very, very solid in my self-compassion. I'm very solid in my almost observer seat of the human being, and like find the whole thing so humorous. Like I find Jessie so humorous. Like it's such a funny character to be playing, and it's really enjoyable to be in that. So I do have this zoomed out perspective on my life. Relationships have changed in terms of the way I interact with people, the way I feel about people. And just my navigation of the human experience is very, very aligned, and simultaneously I allow myself to have all the feelings. So I allow myself to feel the suffering, or to get tangled up in something that is, you know, not to preference, and then to like struggle to get it, you know, to align myself with it. So life has really become an amazing adventure. It's really become something that is so precious. Like there's not a moment that goes by where I'm not like, this is the coolest adventure there could ever be. And it also gets hard to hold on to problems, I think. Like,
yeah,
you can identify them and see that there's suffering and stuff like that, but it's almost like very quickly you simply get bored with focusing on that thing, because there's so much other beautiful things to focus on, like the pimple, right? Or like the like the dirt, or like I used to work as a computer animator. And in computer animation, you have to, like, if you're going to have a character walking through a room, you have to obviously create the whole room, and you have to create like the texture of the floor, the texture of the walls. And if you do it too perfectly, it doesn't look realistic. So you have to add in the dirt, and you have to add in like the weird lighting, or that ugly lamp in the corner, because of course there's always an ugly lamp. You know what I mean? Like there's just details in existence that make you go, okay, this is real. If you take those same principles and put them back to like your life, like, I don't know what that thing is under her bed, but like it's there. It's there to make it real. You know, it could also not be there, but everything around us is so rich and abundant with detail that it's very hard to sort of be one funnel focused anymore for me. So when problems come up, I'm like, it'll probably fix itself. And it does. It really does. Problems, guess what, guys? The secret to life is the problem will go away on its own.
There was this episode in your life where you were diagnosed with breast cancer and then you
Yeah.
had to do the mastectomy.
Mhm.
How did that experience change the way you view life?
So that was right before my YouTube started to take off. It was interesting sort of timing. So the weirdest thing about that was on the way to the appointment where they told me that this was the situation, I already knew. So I've had this grace in my life that when there have been big things happen, I have like almost not, I wouldn't say it's a premonition. It's not like I have the information, but it's like a grace comes on that creates a calm that then allows me to be in a space where I feel held, even if there's some bad news or even if there's something. So that was really, something on the way to that appointment where I was like, yeah, okay, everything's going to be fine. But not because the preference was going to appear, but because everything always is fine. So I almost had like a grace sort of thing on the way to the appointment. So when I arrived, and got this news, it was upsetting, of course. And I did choose to have the mastectomy without reconstruction for lots of reasons for me, but that also in itself was an amazing turning point for my personal journey, because we don't often listen to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We often listen to what society wants from us, and we often go into just like, yes, this is the default, the way things are supposed to be. This is what the expert's telling me. But there was a very strong communication within myself that, guess what, Jessie? You're you. Like, you don't have a choice. Like, you are you, and your desires and your wishes and your preferences are always going to be uniquely yours, and they're not going to be necessarily mainstream, and they're not necessarily going to be the easiest routes, right? But they're going to be you. So that was one of these moments where I was like, oh, wow, I get to be me, which was really cool. But the other thing that it kind of lit a fire under was because, cancer collectively has this huge weight around it, and, oh no, there's death and there's this and that. What ended up happening was it occurred to me that your life, the quality of your life that you have right now, can be taken away from you at any moment by any small thing. And we were talking like smaller than I was very lucky. It was like smaller than the tip of this pen, what they found. Okay. Which is crazy because they wouldn't have found it for years, maybe, because it was something that I was like, I knew it was there. Anyway, so that was the situation. And so what was freed up in me was the fact that, guess what? You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want, because whatever it is you're trying to protect yourself from, first of all, is probably not the thing that's going to get you.
Yeah.
Right? Like me being self-conscious about how people see me on camera is not the thing that's going to turn up and like destroy your life or, be the really big challenge. The things that are really big challenges, they're surprises. The thing that you're worried about in your head is an imagination, an idea, and potentially even something you're manifesting onto yourself without any need to do it. So having this experience gave me this unbelievable freedom to be like, anytime I'm worried about something and like trying to control the outcome, I don't need to anymore, because there's no way to even know what it is you're meant to be trying to control. And when something arrives that is bad, guess what? You don't have any control anyways. So protection became absolutely obsolete for me. There was no more need to have a shield or a protection, because the truth was that anything could appear at any time to completely change your trajectory. And in the meantime, you get to live to the absolute fullest if you don't hold on to that protection. So many people are blocking themselves from living because they're like, well, if I quit my job, then I won't have this, or I won't have that, or I won't have, but you also might. And guess what? You could also not quit your job, and then some tragedy can occur in your city and your whole house could be destroyed. Like, there could be anything that could happen that you having stayed in that job and being unhappy was just a waste of your life.
That's so powerful, right? I love that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
great experience for me. I know, like, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it like really had so much more positive impact in my life than negative.
Jessica, I noticed that a lot of the people who are spiritually awakened or going through this experience of getting into channeling seem to have broken relationships. What do you think this is teaching?
So I don't think it's just relationships. I think a lot of people change jobs. I think a lot of people change locations. I think what happens when you're going through a spiritual awakening or process or called more into your true self, your circumstances in life then have to really begin to align with what's right for you. And I think that before a spiritual sort of experience, you might not even know what's right for you, or you might be going along with things that you had set up in earlier moments in your life and are just maintaining them for whatever reason. But when you're in a spiritual process, you're then confronted with anywhere you're not being authentic with yourself. So I don't think that relationships necessarily end because there's now some sort of conflict. It's more that anything that isn't aligned with your true self starts to bubble to the surface and then becomes so uncomfortable because you're now aware of the contrast that perhaps before you were sort of like distracted with things or not paying attention or reasoning with yourself, that you're forced then to step into integrity and make certain changes that are required so that your life can align with your inner being.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about channelers and this whole process of channeling?
I think that some people, there's still that sort of what you would call like superstition or idea that there could be something that's considered possession. And I do believe that there must be a substratum of people who have the opening for channeling, who don't have the discernment for what frequency to bring through. So I see channelers kind of like a radio, and you're tuning the dial to what comes through.
Deification or idolization is not encouraged at all, nor is the discussion, debate, or reinterpretation of their words for any means other than their personal understanding. Could you add on to this?
It's interesting because that's not only about the book, right? I think that if you can understand that as a philosophy for existence, that nothing that's presented to you in all of existence is ever presented to you for any reason whatsoever, except for you to decide who you want to be. So there's no need to seek truth, to figure out like what to follow, how to be, or anything like that. There's only offering acceptance or saying no, thank you. There's nothing else in existence. So the book is presented and has that sort of like warning saying, listen, only take what serves you, let go of everything else. Everything that doesn't serve you only exists to show you what you like, who you are, what you want.
When you go into channeling, and is it like a voice that you hear? Is it visions? What is it like?
So my experience when I come out of channeling is I don't have very much memory. Sometimes I will remember the visual things I've seen. Sometimes I will remember the physical things, but it's so like a dream. It's like, when you kind of have that, like, I wonder what just happened. Oh, I think there was like an airplane and then it's gone. So that's my experience in terms of the channeling.
Is it in any way dangerous to you?
So for me, it's extremely energizing by contrast.
Right.
I get very high. So when I come out, I feel very much like, I don't know, like in a bliss state. So I'm very goofy and I'm in a bliss state. However, I'm extremely aware that if I don't ground in some way by getting back into my physical body, then that will be taxing on me somehow down the road, right? So I tend to like go and like eat something or do something physical or put my feet on the grass or that kind of thing, because I can see how running at that speed, not just on the brain level as well, but running at that speed sort of like energetically, you might get to a space of burnout, right? Or if you attempted to be at that level even when you weren't channeling, because you could, let's say you'd want to hold on to that amazing feeling of like being blissed out, right? So you might like go into your day and be like, now I'm going to be blissed out. And I don't do that. I'm like, as fast as possible, let's get back to like washing the dishes and like doing the human thing, hanging out with the cats, picking up the kids from school, because otherwise your physical system isn't up to speed with it. And that does take training. So it does take some time before you're accustomed to it. And I think that you have to have really good practices of being human to be able to be a channel. It's just, you can't do it in any other way.
Yeah, I totally get that. And what is your process like to get into that state of channeling?
I'm not even sure how it works.
Really?
I'm not sure how it works. And then I think the biggest part of the process for me is trust. Because every single time I start channeling, I'll get comfortable, and then I can feel the presence, and I can immediately feel like that's the radio station. But one of the reasons why VAGREIN always says almost the exact same sentence at every channeling, like to get into it, is because I feel safe with that sentence. And for the first 3 words of that sentence, if they're like proposing something else, I'll get into doubt. So if they want to go like straight into a transmission or straight into something, I get into this like, is that them? Is that me? Am I making this up? I get into the same sort of processes that people have. However, if they go into like one of their signature sorts of sentences, I'm like, yeah, I can safely say that sentence. Everything will be okay. And then by the time it gets halfway through, and the sentence is so fast now, like it's like they're basically just like,
just get it over with.
Exactly. it's quite funny. And then like 3 words in, I'm just gone. So it's a very interesting sort of thing.
That's amazing. When it comes to channeling and when you get into the channeling process, right? How does it work for you?
I think what generally happens is I just go and look for that signature and close my eyes, relax, look for my signature. And for example, if I'm holding any tension in my stomach, I have to remember to let that go and then just completely relax. And then they'll just begin speaking. It's really quite easy somehow. I don't know how it works or how I know how to do it, but it's really an amazing sort of thing that doesn't require any effort.
Has there been any time where you decided you're going to channel, but then they didn't come through?
No.
No.
And I'm always sort of like concerned that might happen. I leave the door open for that being a possibility, but that's actually been something that probably at the beginning I was a little bit concerned about, especially when I started working with channeling as opposed to just offering it for free. But it's been very much a collaboration all along. It's so consistent, the energy, and it's such a blessing to have access to it. I don't know if they'll be forever, but I'm enjoying it while it's here.
That's beautiful. We are excited and we would love to speak with VAGREIN.
Okay,
if you're ready.
Perfect. Yes, I'll go get them. I won't remember what's going on while I'm in trance, but hopefully you'll let me know at the end. Good now to you. We are pleased to be meeting with you in this fashion and are eager to discuss with you and whoever it is that will listen to this anything you so choose to know more of yourselves. Hello.
Hello. Hi, VAGREIN. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
We thank you.
My first question would be, how can someone tell the difference between imagination and a real spiritual message or intuitive insight?
Well, there really is no difference, as imagination has got a bad rap in some ways from your collective. You do see how easily children dip in and out of their imagination. This is because they are more easily dipping in and out of physical reality into the multitudes of parallel experiences that can be had from a multidimensional being, which humans all are. So imagination, if it is intentional, in other words, if you are intentionally choosing to visualize something for yourself, is you allowing yourself to have access to that particular, what you would call reality on the spiritual level. So you can imagine the relationship that you are wanting. You can imagine your future abundance. You can imagine a holiday that is coming up for you. And it is, for all intents and purposes, as real as anything else that is in existence. It is simply that it is on the non-physical plane as opposed to the current physical plane. Imagination can also call in anything to the physical plane if you so choose. Implication that a spiritual experience is not, quote, imagination is also due to the fact that it can go the other way. And in this case, what you would be perceiving is inspiration, which somehow gets more value than imagination does. However, they are equal in their value in that one is the receptor, or you are receptive to those energies of the all that is. And the other is that you are the contributor to the energies of all that is. So if, for example, you have an imagination, what you would call an imagination, or you think that you have imagined something having occurred, then no matter in whether or not it has manifested into what you perceive of as physical reality, it has indeed occurred simply because you have had the ability to experience it. Nothing exists outside of your experience of it. Everything that is only exists because of your ability to experience it. So imagination is as valid as anything that you could perceive of as, quote, real on the spiritual plane.
Could you describe yourself in terms of frequency or dimension, and how is it related to God?
So we do not have a dimension. Dimension is a explanation of the differences in energy in order for it to be comprehended in some way that humans can understand. And you do have a predisposition towards hierarchical systems. So you can imagine that there's humans and the physical plane, that is matter slowed down to a certain amount. Then there's the individuation of the self, that is what you would call the soul, etc. Then you would have your teams, your guides, and up and up and up and up. We do not have that particular form of manifestation because we do not actually exist as anything ever separate from the energy of all that is. What you are seeing represented through this particular vessel, yes, is the flavoring of what we ultimately are, that is then filtered through all of the particular funnels that this vessel would have to bring this down into a slow enough form to be available, to be communicated in your languages. But what we are sourced from is and would be the equivalent of existence itself. Now, God is a term that has many implications, that has much information around it historically and much emotion around it. So we would not associate ourselves, what we are, with that particular word. However, that word does point to an understanding, for some of you, not for all of you, of the unity of all that is. In some of your cultures, there is a punitive god. In some of your cultures, there is a god with preference. In some of your cultures, there are gods, multiple, who have command over certain things. And even in some of your cultures, gods that fight with one another. And even in all of your cultures, there are gods, according to you, even if you are monotheistic, that are at odds with each other, which of course makes no sense whatsoever, because a monotheistic situation or circumstance would imply that your god is the same as everybody else's. We will not get into that because, again, it is a complicated matter. But our particular frequency, not through this filter, of course, with the flavors that it has, but ultimately the source through which is exactly the same frequency that is sourced through all that is. So it is the same frequency in a baby's cry. It is the same frequency in the baby's diaper.
In the Bible, we've had so many channelers who are channeling different entities. Who were they channeling?
Are indeed different flavors and entities that can be channeled. But again, it is all a question of the permission slips that those who want to listen to want to call into reality. And this is very much connected to imagination, in that whatever it is that you are wanting to create is available to you to create. So yes, there are angels. Yes, there are ghosts. Yes, there are demons. Yes, there are fairies and dragons. Yes, there are aliens. Yes, there are different species. All that is must include everything that is. So ultimately, if someone is receptive to channeling, they can tune into any of these flavors. And ultimately, all of you are tuning into most often the flavor that you would perceive of as your own individuation.
If intuitive messages or channeling come through slowly or inconsistently, what can they do to strengthen that connection and create more flow?
So if it is coming through in some level of slowness, the first thing to do, and we know you hate this, we say this to you all the time, is to have the patience. And of course, that is the most irritating thing for you to hear when you are wanting very deeply for this thing to increase in its pace. The next thing that you can do is look within yourself and understand, why is it serving me in this now moment for this particular gift to not take off or become faster or become more available or more prevalent for me? And that slowness may point to, for example, a fear of being seen in a certain way, or a fear of trusting the energy or the messages that are coming through. It may point to a doubt. It may point to a reluctance to let go to the point in which it would become more fluid, etc. So the slowness is a compassionate aspect of any channeling work that you may be doing, because it will be measured and modulated according to your own readiness. And so if it is slow, there is a correct reason for why it is slow. If you would want to remove that slowness or to work more quickly, then it does require you to go through all of the steps and the phases that the slowness is pointing to you towards wanting resolving.
What advice would you give to someone who freezes or doubt themselves when they're trying to share their gifts, especially in front of others?
Yes, well, do it anyway, is what we would say to you, because in the experiencing of the fear, one does come to the other side of it. In other words, courage is the only way to become fearless, ultimately. You do not have courage when you are courageous, it is not the absence of fear that you're experiencing. It is the fear and choosing anyway to go ahead with what you know to be right within you. That is when courage is formed. And in the allowing and saying to the universe, yes, I will do this thing anyways. Yes, I am on board with my authentic self. Yes, I do believe in my messages. Yes, I will continue down this path. What then happens is the universe must reflect to you a yes. So even if whatever you are afraid of occurs, and we do know that you all have this fear of public speaking or this fear of arriving at your school without your trousers, then you will find out that even in the case of you getting up on stage and saying the wrong thing, nothing actually happened. Even in the case of your friends and your families pointing and ridiculing you, nothing actually happened. In fact, if you have friends and family who are pointing and ridiculing you, then it is a good thing that you have been authentic and they have pointed and they've ridiculed you, because then you know that they are not truly your friends, and perhaps you might want to take some distance from your family. So the only way to live your life is to live your life 100% with that courageous knowing that no matter what you do, if you have done it with authenticity, if you have done it with that courage, you are automatically going to be better off than the day that you are hiding yourself or freezing or running from your realistic expression of self.
For those who are called to speak their truth, but who struggle with expression, especially with their throat chakra blocks, are there any helpful practices we can do to unlock that authentic voice?
Yes, use it more often. We do not know why you are not singing. Your birds do it every morning. We do not know why you are not joking around or making noises or grunts or whatever. You are all inhibited in terms of using your voices in ways that are not, quote, to express the most intelligent opinion possible. You are allowed to be silly. You are allowed to say whatever it is you are wanting. And again, singing, humming, tuning, these are all things that will help to unblock that throat chakra. And back to that question of the courage, your heart chakra is right underneath it. So often that blockage is not necessarily happening in the throat. It is happening in between the two of them. And it is a question of deciding that the biggest risk you could possibly face in life is not living your life at all.
How can we build more trust with our higher self, our intuition and guides?
Well, stop thinking you know better. In that you are not your mind, you are not your body. And when you identify with your mind and your body, you get into a space of quite a lot of fear where you believe you have to control things, you believe you have to fix things, you believe you have to save yourself for survival. If you can align yourself knowing that it is not indeed that you, whoever you think you might be, need to connect with your higher self, it is that you are already your higher self, then your ability to discern what is true for you or not true for you comes through in a very different way, because it does not start in the mind. It starts in a knowing. It starts in a sensation in the energetic body more so than it does in logic. Every single one of you has had the experience where you've been weighing the pros and cons of some sort of situation for a long period of time and knew all along the choice you were going to make anyhow. You were just looking in those lists of pros and cons for the excuse to make it make sense to your brain. But ultimately, you knew from day one what it is you were going to choose. It is that alignment with the higher self that is the renunciation of free will in very many ways, that you are simply choosing in that moment, again, back to having the life that is meant for you or that you have crafted for yourself through being in alignment. There's nothing better than being in alignment with yourself.
How can someone balance their spiritual mission with everyday responsibilities like work, money, and time, especially when they're called to serve more fully?
Well, guess what? Your everyday responsibilities are your spiritual mission. In that, your human life is the most spiritual experience you could possibly ever have. You have literally taken from spirit the ability to create matter and an entire world in which to play as your playground. This is your spiritual evolution. This is the cutting edge of your evolution of your isness as both an individuation and as all that is. This is the expansion of the energy of the universe into a format that has never existed before. So yes, when you are picking up the children from their soccer practice, or yes, when you are washing the dishes, it can feel very mundane and not as significant as perhaps turning water into wine or teaching the masses about spirituality. But if you can understand that that is your spiritual practice in that moment, because life is your spiritual practice, then you can begin to understand the miracle that is in those small and minuscule moments to the point where you are in a state of bliss at all times. We know this is difficult because it does require you deciding that you want to be happy and you very much enjoy drama. You very much enjoy playing the game of being dissatisfied. But the truth is that every sensation that a human can experience is in and of itself bliss incarnate.
Why is grounding so important for empaths and channels and newly awakened souls? And what are some of the most effective ways to stay grounded?
It is exactly this. It is a recognition that your human life is absolutely valid, important, and is what is tethering you to existence itself. You could not, you would not, and you do not experience anything outside of your physical vessel. So, for as much as we talk about the higher self, etc., and all of its intentions, etc., it is not the same as you. It does not have linear time. It does not have location. It does not even have experience. It is only through that human aspect of you perceiving of it that it then became or becomes tethered to you as an individuation. But ultimately, the only thing that exists is your human incarnation. And in that human incarnation, yes, there's the entire non-physical aspect of what you are able to perceive, either more or less. Empaths would do well to be grounding more often because they tend to get up into their spiritual bodies in which they are not then having the human experience. Either they're avoiding the sensation of it and therefore cannot tell the difference between when their feet are slightly sweaty or when they are completely comfortable, etc. So one of the practices is indeed, yes, putting your feet on literally the ground, because there's the metaphorical or representational aspect of that is well for you. But there's also eating a big bowl of cereal or making love or doing some gardening or whatever it might be that is you using your physical vessel for the point of interacting with your sensation and then having the delight as the non-physical of how wonderful it is to have a body in the first place.
What are some common traps or patterns those who are on the service path would look like, and how can they stay aligned and sustainable in their work?
We would not say it's traps or patterns, but what we have noticed is that often those of you who are in service have absolutely no idea how to receive service, therefore are terrible service providers. Because you have this desire to give, and yet when someone turns around and gives to you, whether it be financial remuneration, whether it be love, whether it be service from their part because they have the desire to give, you do not allow yourself to receive these gifts. And in the not receiving of these gifts, you are actually denying that other service provider their joy. So you have not closed the circuit, which means that you yourself will have that same experience on the other end. You will want to give your gift to someone who, in turn, does not know how to receive it. And then your energy will be left hanging around. You will say, I don't understand. I had such wonderful advice for them and they simply would not take it. Or I had all this love to give this partner, this significant other that I was trying to develop relationship with, and they ran away. What is going on here? It is because that circuit would need to be closed. The methods to arrive to the closing of the circuit are discernment. They are creating and setting boundaries, not with others, but with yourself, that you feel are holistic. They are clearing out any energies of resentment that you are building up, because you tend to. They are letting go of the ideas that you are a victim, because we've noticed also many service beings are stepping into either martyrship roles, or they are saying, look at me, I'm so sensitive and I am incapable of taking care of myself. So these aspects would need to go so that you could be solid in your service, both in the giving and the receiving, and then from there have a very joyful experience of being in service to others.
What would be the most important thing for new way showers to remember when the path feels confusing or lonely?
Well, it is a bit lonely, isn't it? In that you are a bit different from others, are you not? Step into the pride of knowing that you were not meant to come here to, quote, not feel lonely. Loneliness is a misunderstanding. It is a longing for something that you don't actually really need. Of course you want connection, and of course you want companionship, and of course you want play. But there's this idea around loneliness that says that if someone is not by my side at some point or for 24 hours of the day, that must mean I am unworthy. You were already created worthy when you came. So you are a little bit unique as a way shower in that it is not for others to come and prop you up, but instead for you to be indeed that solidity for yourself. It does not mean, again, that you will not have companionship. It does balance itself out, but it is very common to have that sensation of loneliness and detachment in these beings, because it is that they are assigned a certain percentage or portion of the collective to which they are in service.
What happens when someone is going through suffering and they're crying and praying to God?
Well, what do you mean by what happens?
Because what I understand is when you're crying, then you are focusing on what has not happened, you're focusing on the loss, you're focusing on what you haven't received, and then you're going to magnify the loss. Is that what happens? Is there a better way to pray?
So, in terms of crying, is several things, or negative emotion, we will say, in general, is several things. It is information for you. Allowing it, as opposed to suppressing it or attempting to change it, is one of the fastest ways to understand what the misunderstanding was in the first place. So if there is sorrow and you are allowing that sorrow, you will come to that sorrow having wisdom for you where the misalignment is. In other words, do not repress your emotions. Do not try to change them because you are afraid that your prayers will not be answered. That would just be compiling them. What you can do instead is, with grace, allow the emotion to come out and see where the misalignment is. Know that every time you are having negative emotion, it is because there is some level of misunderstanding going on. So, for example, will give you a strong example. You are a parent and your child is unwell. And you are crying and crying and crying because your child is unwell and you would like for intervention from the higher dimensions. The misalignment here is that idea, and it is a great misalignment and very difficult for you humans to understand. The belief there is that the child's sickness would end, if the child were to pass, in the parent's destruction. They feel that if they were to lose their child, their heart would be broken and irreplaceably, undeniably, never mended. And it is the case, of course, that is one of the worst things that could happen on the emotional level. But the density of the sorrow that comes with that is in direct proportion to how much that being wants to understand of the invincible nature of the human soul or of the human spirit, etc. And they've created and danced in that co-creation with their child for the reasons of both parties having a soul contract in which they are experimenting with that particular frequency or energy. The reality is that as people pass or come in and out of your life, they do continue to exist. And you do know the story of time healing wounds. And you have even heard of parents who have lost a child many years ago who are functioning or have turned that into a beautiful charity or have created something miraculous in the lives of others because of that experience that they had. So everything is ultimately coming to a space of working itself out. We do not teach the same rules of the law of attraction so much that put you in a position of being afraid of your feelings, because all of your feelings are allowed and all of your feelings are natural. Lingering in the belief around the feelings, however, is not necessarily beneficial to you. If you can come to the space where you understand with grace what the feeling is trying to point you to, first of all, the feeling will pass through your system. And second of all, you will then be further along the path that you have created for yourself with that particular catalyst.
It seems like the world is going through major shifts. There's wars everywhere. People are going through job loss. Relationships are breaking down. And it seems like the world is coming to an end. What exactly is happening now, and what can be forced? What do you foresee from 2025 until 2030 happening?
Yes, so the world is in some ways coming to an end, the world that you had, because you have so insistently said that the systems that you currently have in place are not to your preference. So much must be shaken up. We say often the snow globe of existence and the chaos will prevail until it settles back into formations that you create with and co-create with each other, so as to have new systems that feel more holistic to you. This does take time. Right now, you are going through a phase in which you have decided to shape quite aggressively. And so, yes, there are wars. Yes, there is conflict. Yes, there are polarity opinions that are quite strong. And actually, it is interesting to see how extreme they actually are. In other words, you are in this now moment also running around talking about, and what would be normally reasonable people talking about, killing each other. So it is very interesting to see that your choices are becoming more and more extreme. When you see and hear things that are not to your preference, you are being challenged further to double down on the preferences that you're holding on to. To navigate this, and the time frame that you gave is a good time frame to talk about this movement. Continue to reach into yourself towards love. That truly is the only good advice we have for you, because as you do this, you will automatically shift over and over in each next now moment to the most beneficial timeline for you specifically as an individual. And because of that, also for all that you can perceive, which would include anything that you can perceive of from your individuated nature. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Do you have any final message for us?
As always, we would say have fun, but of course, on that heavy topic and those topics that we have been speaking of, it can seem to be quite hard to go ahead and have fun. But we assure you, nothing here is actually as serious as you make it out to be. Yes, there is suffering. Yes, there is death. Yes, there is emotion. Yes, there is crisis. Yes, there is chaos, but none of it actually matters. You have created all of it to have the adventure of being the hero of your own journey. So go ahead, be the hero of your own journey and choose if that hero has a good sense of humor or not, because it will serve you. And with that, we leave you with the light and the love of 1,000 suns. Nai.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Hi.
How do you feel? How was that?
Good. Great. Yeah, I always feel so blissful afterwards, so dopey and electrified and everything. It's great.
Yeah, because that movement also is very chirpy, right? The way you feel, if you feel energized just talking like that too, just moving your body and then letting the energy flow. So I get it. It's beautiful. I love the messages that they came through and gave. Could you tell us where we can find you and the work that you do?
Yes. So the main source to find me is at www.jpherman.com, which is my website. I have events. I have offerings. I have a free 5-day channeling mailing. So go check that out. I also have free chapters of my book, the book that you were talking about earlier. So people can go and download that as well. I'm also on Instagram at Jessie_VAGREIN and on YouTube at JP Herman. So go and check that out. And I'm trying to get into TikTok. I don't know. How do you do with that sort of stuff?
Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on the podcast and speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.